I never imagined I'd be here, spilling my heart out to strangers over the internet. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. My world came crumbling down last week, and now I'm left to pick up the pieces of what I believed was the ideal marriage. It all began with an innocent remark at a party, but it swiftly escalated into a revelation that has shook me to the core. My wife, the woman I'd loved since high school and the mother of my children, had been leading a double life during our college years. Now I'm confronted with the most difficult decision of my life: forgive and go on, or leave my 18-year marriage. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started. Jessica and I met at high school. She was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen, with long golden hair and a smile that could light up any room. I was the shy, uncomfortable kid who couldn't believe she'd consented to go out with me. We were inseparable from that point on, spending every free moment together dreaming about our future. We discussed everything: where we'd live, how many children we'd have, and even what we'd name our dog. It was puppy love at its best, but it felt so real and permanent. We were each other's firsts in every manner that mattered, and I believed that made us unique, unbreakable. When it came time for college, we had our first true test. I'd been offered a position at one of the world's finest colleges, a dream come true for any budding entrepreneur. Jessica had already been accepted into a good school closer to home. We debated the decision, but in the end, we decided that I should seize the opportunity. We reasoned that a few years apart would be worthwhile for our future together. "You go be brilliant," Jessica said to me, her eyes filled with emotions and joy. "I'll be here waiting for you." And thus began our long-distance relationship. It wasn't easy, but I immersed myself into my studies and worked harder than ever before. Every idle moment was spent on the phone with Jessica or plotting my next trip home. I rejected down-party invitations and spring break getaways with my classmates. My only concentration was on creating a future for us. Looking back, I see how naive I was. While I was working late in the library, Jessica was... Fast forward 18 years. Jessica and I are married and have 2 boys, ages 12 and 15. I've developed a profitable business, and Jessica is a stay-at-home parent, as we always intended. From the outside, we appear to be the perfect family. However, appearances can be deceiving. On a Saturday night, we attended a party with some old high school classmates. The wine was flowing and everyone was nostalgic, telling anecdotes about the good old days. That's when it happened. The moment that would change everything. Jessica's friend, Megan, who was always the light of the party, was telling a story from their college days. "Remember that time we snuck into that frat party?" she asked, nudging Jessica. "God, you were such a wild child back then." I nearly missed it. But when I looked over at Jessica, her face had turned paler. She was giving Megan an expression that might freeze hell itself. My stomach fell, and the room suddenly felt too small and overheated. I tried to stay composed for the duration of the party, but inwardly I was reeling. The journey home was silent, and tension hung in the air. Jessica continued giving me worrisome looks, but I could not force myself to look at her. As soon as we arrived home, I checked on the boys, who were both fast sleeping and blissfully ignorant that their parents' world was about to shatter. Then I looked to Jessica, my heart racing. "We need to talk," I replied, scarcely rising above a whisper. "What did Megan mean about you being wild in college?" Jessica's gaze darted across the room, refusing to face mine. "Oh, you know Megan," she joked hesitantly. "She constantly exaggerates. We just attended to a few parties. But I knew my wife. I could see guilt all over her face." "Jessica," I whispered, my tone low and menacing, "I seek the truth, all of it. And if I even suspect you're lying to me, I swear to God I'll contact Megan right now and get the whole story from her." She hesitated for a moment before the floodgates opened. Okay, she replied, her voice shaking. I went out a lot during college. There were parties, clubs, and other males. My world tipped on its axis." "Other guys?" I repeated, feeling as if I could be ill. "How many?" Jessica's face wrinkled. "I don't know exactly. she said quietly. It happened a long time ago, but quite a few. I could not breathe, could not think. The room spun around me. Were you sleeping with them? I managed to choke out. Her quiet was the only answer I needed. I don't recall much of what followed. I know I left the house and drove to a hotel in a stupor. My phone was flooded with Jessica's texts and calls, but I couldn't bear to look at them. I could only think about how stupid I had been. While I was working my ass hard, remaining faithful, and fantasizing about our future together, Jessica was living it up, hooking up with God knows how many men. The next few days were a haze. I scarcely ate or slept. Jessica's texts ranged from heartfelt apologies to aggressive defenses. It was before we were married, she insisted. It doesn't change anything about our life now. However, it altered everything for me. I couldn't stop seeing her with different men. I couldn't stop thinking if I had ever truly known her. Was the lady I married, the mother of my children, even real? Or is it just a cleverly manufactured lie? After a few days, I realized I needed to face her. I couldn't stay hidden at a motel forever. So I went home, bracing myself for the crucial chat that would decide the fate of our marriage. Jessica waited for me, her eyes red and puffy from sobbing. The boys were at her parents' house. Thank God for tiny mercies. I did not want them to witness this. We need to talk, I replied, repeating my comments from that fatal night. And this time, I want the entire truth. No more lies or half-truths. I need to know everything. Jessica nodded, her face a mask of despair. What do you want to know? She gently inquired. I took a deep breath. I want names, I said, and numbers. How many times with each guy? Write everything down. Her eyes widened with shock. You can't be serious, she argued. That was years ago. I don't even remember. Then make up names, I interrupted her. But the numbers better be correct, because if I ever discover out you lied about this, we're done. No second chances. Jessica reached for a pen and paper as tears streamed down her face. For the next hour, I sat in silence as she scribbled, pausing only to reflect or wipe her eyes. Finally, she gave me the list. My hands shook as I grasped it, unsure whether I was prepared to face the full magnitude of her betrayal in black and white. 26 names. Some had only one experience, while others had as many as 30. My eyesight blurred as I stared at the page, feeling as if I'd been punched in the stomach. Why? I finally asked, but my voice was hardly audible. Why did you do it? Jessica's shoulders slumped. I was young, she muttered. Stupid. I felt free for the first time in my life. And you were so far away. I laughed bitterly. Is this my fault? Because I moved away to college? No, she exclaimed. That's not what I intended. I merely made mistakes, terrible errors. But they don't change how I feel about you or our family. I rose up, needing to create some space between us. They change everything, I remarked, my voice harsh. You lied to me for 18 years, Jessica. Every day in our marriage has been based on a lie. She grabbed for me, but I moved back. Please, she begged. I will do whatever to make things right. Anything. I looked at her, this lady I'd loved for so long, and all I could feel was a cold, empty vacuum where my heart once was. Anything? I repeated. She nodded enthusiastically. Yes, anything. Just let me know what you need. I took a big breath, not believing what I was about to say. Throughout our relationship, you slept with 26 men. So now I'll get to sleep with 26 ladies. The same number of times you did with each man. Jessica's face lost its color. What? She gasped. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious, I responded, my tone chilly. Do you think sleeping around in a committed relationship is no big deal? Fine. Then you should have no issues with this. Jessica's amazement swiftly turned to rage. That's completely different, she exclaimed. We are married now. You would be cheating. I laughed bitterly. Oh, so now faithfulness is important to you? It's funny how it works. Please, she implored, tears falling down her cheeks. I will do anything else. Counseling, an open phone policy, whatever you want. Just not this. I shake my head. This is not negotiable, Jessica. Either you agree or I'll call my lawyer in the morning." She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. "You'd throw away 18 years of marriage over this?" "No," I corrected her. "You threw it away when you decided to sleep with half the campus behind my back." Jessica dropped onto the couch and sobbed uncontrollably. I stood there watching her, feeling nothing but a cold, empty void where my heart once was. "I'm going back to the hotel," I announced finally. "You have until Friday to decide. Either you accept my terms or we're done." As I walked out the door, I heard her broken whisper, "I apologize. I'm so sorry." But apologizing wasn't enough. Not anymore. The following few days were a blur. I plunged myself into work, hoping to divert myself from the incessant assault of thoughts and feelings. Jessica's messages and calls persisted, swinging between emotional pleas and aggressive accusations. "You're being unreasonable," one text stated. "This happened before we were even married." I did not bother answering. In my mind, the minute we chose to stay together while I went to college, we were committed. We weren't legally married yet, but that didn't affect anything. As Friday neared, I felt myself becoming increasingly worried. Part of me hoped Jessica would agree to my requirements just so I could watch her squirm. But another part of me, a larger portion than I wanted to admit, hoped she would refuse. Because I knew deep down that even if she said yes, our marriage would never be the same. The trust was gone. Our love's innocence, our idea that we were something exceptional and unbreakable, had all turned to ashes. Friday morning started bright and clear. I awoke early with my stomach in knots. I invited Jessica to meet me at a neighborhood coffee shop around 10 a.m. Neutral ground seems to be the greatest option for this discourse. I arrived early, ordered a black coffee, and found a quiet corner table. As I waited, I couldn't help but recall all the times Jessica and I had sat in this same coffee shop in high school, planning our future together. God, we had been so young, so naive. Jessica strolled in at exactly 10 a.m. She looked dreadful, with heavy circles under her eyes, and her hair pulled back into an untidy ponytail. She had plainly been crying. She sat across from me, her hands quivering as she gripped her purse. "Hi," she whispered quietly. "Hi," I responded, my voice lifeless. "Have you made your decision?" Jessica took a big breath. "I have," she replied. "But before I tell you, I need you to understand something." I raised an eyebrow and waited. "What I did in college, it was stupid and selfish," she told me. "I was young, insecure, and made many mistakes, but none of those people meant anything to me. It was just physical. I felt my jaw clench. Is that supposed to make me feel better?" She shakes her head. "No, I understand it doesn't. I am only trying to explain. Michael, you were always the one I adored. Always. We have a real marriage and family. Those faults I committed in college do not affect that." I leaned back in my chair and studied her face. "Maybe not for you," I replied gently. "However, they change everything for me. Every memory I have of us, every moment I thought was special, is now tainted." Jessica had tears welling up in her eyes. "I know," she whispered, "and I will regret that for the rest of my life. But please, Michael, please do not abandon our family over this. Our boys require us. I need you." I felt a knot form in my throat. Despite everything, a part of me still cherished her. I still wanted to believe that we could get past this. But the larger part of me, the one that had been betrayed and lied to for 18 years, was still angry. "I'm hurt." "Your decision, Jessica," I responded, my voice harsh. "Do you agree to my terms or not?" She closed her eyes, a tear falling down her cheek. "I can't," she muttered. "I apologize, but I cannot agree to that. It would destroy us." I nodded, experiencing a strange combination of relief and disappointment. "Then I guess we're done here," I remarked, standing up. "Wait." Jessica wept and grabbed my arm. "Please, there must be another way. What if I agreed to let you sleep with one woman? Just once?" I looked at her incredulously. "Are you serious now? Do you believe that evens the score?" She flinched at my tone. "I'm just trying to find a compromise," she explained weakly. I shook my head in disdain. There are no compromises, Jessica, not for this. I'll have my lawyer prepare the divorce papers next week. As I turned to leave, Jessica shouted out one more time, I love you, Michael. I have always adored you. Please do not do this. I paused at the door without turning around. You should have thought of that 18 years ago, I added gently. I went out, leaving my soon-to-be ex-wife sobbing at the table. The drive home was a haze. My mind was racing, recreating every aspect of our connection, looking for anything I might have overlooked. Were there clues all along? Or had Jessica simply been that proficient at concealing her true nature? As I arrived into our driveway, I noticed Jessica's car was not present. Good. I wanted some alone time in the house to digest what my life was going to be like now. I walked in, the silence overwhelming. Family portraits dotted the walls, capturing beautiful moments in time. They were all lies. I entered our bedroom, my bedroom now, I suppose, and sat heavily on the bed. That's when I realized it. Jessica's diary is resting on her nightstand. I have never read it before. I never felt the need to invade her privacy in that way, but suddenly all bets were off. With trembling hands, I picked up the little leather-bound book. It felt wrong, like I had crossed a line. But hadn't Jessica already crossed every boundary in our relationship? I opened to a random page and scanned the familiar handwriting. April 15th, 2006. Michael proposed today. I've never felt happy in my life. He is everything I could ever desire, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with him. When I think about the terrible mistakes I made in college, I get ill to my stomach. But that is all behind me now. Michael will never know, and this will never happen again. He is the only man I will ever want or need. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. Even on the day of our engagement, she had been lying, keeping secrets. I flipped to another, more recent page. September 3rd, 2023. The boys began school today. As I saw them enter the building, I couldn't help but think about how fortunate I was. Michael is the most incredible husband and father. Sometimes I look at him and wonder how I was so fortunate. How did I end up with such a great life? I know I don't deserve it, especially after what I did so many years ago, but I'm grateful for every day I spend with him and our boys. Tears obscured my vision as I closed the diary. Jessica's statements portrayed a mother who genuinely loved her family and regretted her past misdeeds. But was that enough? Could I ever trust her again, knowing what I know now? My phone buzzed while I was sitting there, lost in thought. Jessica sent a text. I understand you are upset and angry. I understand if you cannot forgive me, but for the sake of our boys, might we please speak one more time? I have an idea that could help us move forward. I stared at the message for a while, my hand hanging over the respond button. Part of me wanted to disregard it, move forward with the divorce and never look back. But another part of me couldn't let go just yet. It remembered the shy, awkward kid who had gone head over heels for Jessica all those years before. With a sad sigh, I typed a response. Just one more discussion, that is it. Meet me at the house tomorrow at noon. As I pushed submit, I couldn't help but worry whether I was making a major mistake. Or was it still possible to restore what remained of our broken relationship? The next day, I awoke feeling as if I had not slept at all. My mind had been racing throughout the night, repeating memories and envisioning situations. By lunchtime, I was a tangle of anxiety and mixed feelings. Jessica arrived exactly on time. She looked better than she had in the coffee shop. Her hair was beautifully groomed, and she had applied makeup. But I could see the impact this was having on her in the dark circles beneath her eyes and the quivering in her hands. "Hi," she whispered softly as she walked inside. "Thanks for agreeing to talk." I nodded curtly and led her to the living room. We sat on opposite ends of the couch. The space between us felt like a gulf. "So," I continued, holding my voice steady, "you said you had an idea." Jessica took a big breath. "Yes," she started. "I've been reflecting a lot on what you said about evening the score, and I realize now that I can't tell you not to do something I did myself." My eyebrows rose in surprise. This was not what I had expected. "Go on," I replied cautiously. I can't agree to you sleeping with 26 women, she added. But what if we opened up our marriage? Only for a while. You could meet new individuals and discover things you might have missed out on because of me. And then, when you think the score is even, we can close it again and start on restoring our friendship. I stared at her, trying to understand what she was saying. You'd be okay with me sleeping with other women? Jessica flinched slightly and nodded. If that's what it takes to save our marriage, I'm in. I despise the notion, but I despise losing you even more. I leaned back and ran a hand through my hair. I do not know, Jessica. This feels wrong, as if it will simply add more lies and deception to our relationship. It wouldn't involve lies or deception, she insisted. We would be upfront and honest about everything, set the ground rules. Maybe we can do it together sometimes. I experienced a sudden outburst of rage. Do it together? What about swinging? Is that something you've always wanted to try? Jessica's face wrinkled. No, God, no, I'm looking for a solution here, Michael. I'm trying to demonstrate to you that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I stood up hastily, needing to create some space between us. You want to know what I think? I spoke, my voice rising. I believe this is just another method for you to rationalize your actions, make what you did appear natural or acceptable. That's not true! Jessica cried, tears running down her face. I realize what I did was terrible. I'll regret that for the rest of my life, but Michael, I love you. I adore our family, and I am frightened of losing it all. I turned to face her, feeling an odd combination of pity and loathing. You should have thought about that before you spread your legs for half the campus. Jessica recoiled like if I had hit her. For a minute, we simply stared at each other, the weight of my words hanging thick in the air. Finally, Jessica said, barely above a whisper, You're correct, I should have, and I'm deeply sorry that I didn't. She stood up and wiped her eyes. I understand you don't believe me, but I need you to know something. Those men meant nothing to me. It was simply physical, a way to feel wanted, I suppose. But Michael, you have always been the one. The only person who truly mattered. I laughed bitterly. Is this supposed to make me feel better? That I was so wonderful that you had to fuck 26 other men to appreciate me? Jessica cringed at my comments but continued on. I understand it doesn't make anything better. Nothing can make things better. But I need you to understand. I've spent the last 18 years attempting to make up for my faults, being the best wife and mother that I could be. I love you with everything I have. My determination waned slightly. If you loved me so much, why haven't you ever told me the truth? Why did you let me believe for all these years that we were each other's first and only? Jessica's shoulders slumped. Because I was a coward, she explained. Because I knew how much it would pain you, and I couldn't handle the idea of losing you. So I told myself that the past was irrelevant, and that what we had today was all that mattered. I shook my head, tired. But it matters, Jessica. It changes everything. She nodded as tears streamed down her cheeks. I understand, and if I could go back, I would change it. But I can't. All I can do now is try to make things right. Thank you, Michael. Tell me what I can do to resolve this. I stared at her for a long time, my thoughts racing. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to believe that our 18-year marriage meant more than her undergraduate misdeeds. However, another louder part could not let go of the betrayal. I don't know if you can fix this, I finally said. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you the same way again. Jessica's face wrinkled, but she nodded. I understand, she muttered. But please, for the sake of our sons, may we at least try? Perhaps counseling? Or a trial separation? I sighed deeply. I need time to think, I explained. This is it. It's too much. I need to process everything. Jessica nodded again, clearly defeated. Of course. Take as much time as you need. I will remain with my sister for a time. Give me some space. As she turned to leave, I had an overwhelming urge to stop her, to take her into my arms and promise that we'd figure it out somehow. But I did not. I could not. Not yet. Jessica! I called as she approached the door. She turned with hope in her eyes. I need to know one more thing. Anything, she asked enthusiastically. I took a deep breath. Was there ever anyone else? After we were married? Jessica's eyes widened with disbelief. No, she said. Oh God, no, never. You've been the only one since the day we said I do. I swear it. I nodded, feeling a little sense of relief. At least there was that. As Jessica went, I sank into the couch, exhausted. My head was filled with emotions and conflicting thoughts. On the one hand, I still adored Jessica. We had established a life together and raised 2 wonderful boys. Could I truly throw it all away because of mistakes she committed before we married? On the other hand, the betrayal was deep. It wasn't only the physical acts, it was the falsehoods and dishonesty that had persisted for 18 years. How could I ever trust her again? I got out my phone and started scrolling through old images of us. We were on our wedding day, both smiling with happiness. Another image of Jessica in the hospital, cradling our firstborn kid. This revelation has tarnished a lifetime of memories, including family vacations, birthday celebrations, and peaceful Sunday mornings. As I sat there, deep in meditation, my phone vibrated with a text. It came from my best friend Tom. Hi man, I haven't heard from you in a few days. Is everything okay? I glanced at the message, unsure whether to unleash everything on him. Tom had been my friend since college, and he'd known Jessica nearly as long as I had. But Dad was also the one who warned me against becoming involved with a girl while we were still in school. Long distance never works out, he informed me. You both will be tempted. It's better to keep things casual. I dismissed his warnings, convinced that Jessica and I were different, that our love was strong enough to endure everything. God, I'd been such an idiot. Before I could talk myself out of it, I pressed the call button. Tom answered the second ring. Hey, buddy, he greeted enthusiastically. What's up? I took a deep breath. Tom, I need to talk with you about something. It is about Jessica. There was a pause at the other end of the line. Okay, Tom replied hesitantly. What's going on? And I told him. Everything. The party, Jessica's admission, and the list of names. By the time I finished, my voice was raspy and I could feel a headache forming behind my eyes. Tom was quiet for a long time. Then, Jesus Christ, man. I'm so sorry, that's crap, I have no idea what to say. I laughed without humor. Yeah, join the club. What are you gonna do? Tom asked. I sighed deeply. I do not know. A part of me wants to walk away, file for divorce, and never look back. But you still love her, Tom added for me. Yeah, I confess. God help me, I do. Tom was quiet for a time before saying, Look, guy, I can't tell you what to do here. This is your life and marriage. But I'll say this. Don't make any impulsive decisions. Take some time to consider what you want. And remember, no matter what you decide, I've got your back. I felt a knot form in my throat. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, staring at nothing. Tom was correct. I couldn't make this decision in the heat of the moment. I needed time to reflect and comprehend things, but as I looked around the house, at the family portraits on the walls and the children's toys scattered on the floor, I couldn't help but wonder if there was any redemption from this, or had Jessica's lies already ruined everything we had created together? The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights and ceaseless rumination. I poured myself into work, thankful for the distraction. However, every time I returned home to an empty house, the reality of my predicament hit me hard. On Wednesday evening, I was sitting at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen, when my phone vibrated. The text came from an unknown number. Hello? Is this Michael? What about Jessica's husband? I frowned and hesitated before responding. Yes, who's this? The response came quickly. This is Megan, Jessica's acquaintance from the party. Could we talk? My heart began racing. Megan was the one who'd revealed Jessica's wild college days, the impetus for this whole catastrophe. What about? I replied back, my fingers shaking slightly. Don't text too much. Can we meet? It's important. I stared at the message for a long time, considering my alternatives. Part of me wanted to dismiss it, to avoid digging deeper into the pain. But another larger portion needed to know the complete truth. Okay, I said. Where and when? We decided to meet at a little cafe across town in 1 hour. As I drove there, my thoughts raced with possibilities. What would Megan want to tell me? More disturbing revelations regarding Jessica's past? Perhaps she was reaching out on Jessica's behalf, attempting to smooth things over. Megan was already at the cafe, nursing a cup of coffee. As I sat down across from her, she appeared uneasy and fidgeted with her napkin. "Thanks for meeting me," she murmured softly. I've been debating whether to contact out or not. But once Jessica informed me what had happened, I felt I had to say something. I nodded and braced myself. "Go on." Megan took a big breath. "First and foremost, I want you to know that I am sorry. I never intended to cause problems by bringing up the past at the celebration. I just didn't realize Jessica hadn't told you." "Told me what, exactly?" I inquired, my voice harsh. Megan flinched slightly. "About what happened at college, the boys and the parties. All of it." I felt my jaw clench. "And you knew? This entire time?" She nodded, appearing depressed. "We were roommates, Michael. Best pals. Of course I knew, but I believed she had told you at some time. I mean, you've been married for so long." I laughed bitterly. "No, she didn't. So why don't you tell me what I've been missing?" Megan seemed uncertain. "Are you certain you want to know?" "It was a long time ago." "I'm sure," I answered confidently. "I need to know everything." So over the next hour, Megan told me everything she could remember about Jessica's college experiences, parties, hookups, and walk of shame mornings. She presented a picture of a girl I didn't recognize, wild, irresponsible, and seemingly indifferent about the guy waiting for her at home. "But you have to understand," Megan replied, begging. "Jessica was going through a lot back then. Her parents had recently divorced, and she was battling with despair. The partying, the guys, I believe it was all to numb the pain." I shook my head and felt sick to my stomach. "That does not excuse it. She may have spoken to me. I would have been there for her." Megan nodded. "I understand. And I believe she understood it too, deep inside. That's why she felt guilty. Why did she never tell you?" As Megan continued speaking, an idea struck me. "Wait," I interrupted her. "You said this all happened our freshman year?" Megan nodded. "Yes, mostly. By sophomore year, she'd calmed down considerably. She said she wanted to focus on her academics and be a better girlfriend to you." I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. "But we weren't exclusive until the end of sophomore year. She told me, it all happened before we were really together." Megan's eyes widened in amazement. "What? No, it is not. Michael, you two were obviously together. She mentioned you frequently and showed us images. Said you were the love of her life." The earth appeared to tilt on its axis. Jessica had lied. Again. Not simply the extent of her infidelity, but also when it occurred. We'd been utterly committed and in love, but she'd been sleeping around behind my back. I stood up abruptly, wanting to get out of there. "I have to go," I said, scarcely hearing Megan's anxious voice calling after me. I drove home in a trance, my brain reeling with the new revelation. When I arrived, I went straight to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I suppose, and took out the box of old memories that I kept in the closet. The letters might be found among the ticket stubs and withered flowers. Dozens of them were exchanged by Jessica and myself during our college years. With shaky palms, I began reading. "My dearest Michael," one said, recalling our sophomore year, "I miss you so much that it hurts. Every day without you seems like an eternity. But I know it will all be worthwhile if we are together forever. You are the only man I will ever want or need. I love you more than words can express." Tears blurred my vision as I read letter after letter, each full of promises of love and fidelity. All falsehoods. I'm not sure how long I sat there, surrounded by the concrete evidence of Jessica's betrayal. But ultimately, I reached for my phone and typed out this message. "I know the truth now. All of it. Do not bother trying to explain or apologize. We're finished." I pushed send before I could second-guess myself and shut off my phone. I couldn't handle her response right now. The next morning, I awoke with a throbbing headache and grim determination. I knew what I needed to do. I contacted my lawyer to initiate divorce proceedings. Then I called Jessica's sister and asked her to bring the boys home. It was time to inform them what was going on. When our sons arrived, they were bewildered and scared, so I seated them in the living room. My heart broke as I tried to explain, in age-appropriate language, that Mommy and Daddy would be living separately for a bit. "But why?" our youngest inquired, his lower lip twitching. "Don't you love Mommy anymore?" I closed my eyes and fought back tears. "I'll always love your mom," I whispered softly. "But sometimes love is insufficient. Sometimes adults make mistakes that are difficult to forgive." As I hugged my grieving children, I couldn't help but reflect on all the memories we'd miss as a family. Christmas, birthdays, graduations. Everything would be different now. Fractured. Later in the evening, while I was putting the boys to bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Please, Michael, let me clarify. The boys need both of us. We can work through this." I stared at the message for a long time before typing up a response. "The boys need both of us, and we'll figure out how to co-parent. But our marriage has ended. Jessica, I can't trust you anymore. Without trust, we have nothing." I pushed send before turning off my phone again. I couldn't handle her pleadings or explanations just now. Perhaps not ever. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I found myself contemplating the future. A future without Jessica at my side. It was simultaneously horrifying and liberating. A part of me still loved her, probably always will. But the trust was damaged beyond repair. What was left after losing trust? I thought of our boys and the example I want to create for them. Did I want them to believe it was acceptable to continue in a relationship based on lies? Or did I want to show them that sometimes the bravest thing to do is to walk away? Finally, I realized I had to choose the latter. It would be difficult, but it was the proper thing to do. For me, the sons, and Jessica. As daylight broke, I silently promised myself. I would get through it. I would be the best father I could be for our sons. And one day, when I was ready, I'd open my heart again. The weeks that followed were a flurry of lawyer appointments, custody negotiations, and terribly awkward interactions with Jessica. We attempted to keep things amicable for the sake of our boys, but the tension was evident whenever we were in the same room. Jessica burst into tears following a heated dispute over sharing our assets. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she wailed. "I was young, ignorant, and made mistakes. But the previous 18 years have been genuine, Michael. Everything I've felt for you, everything we've created together has been genuine." I felt a familiar ache in my chest, a combination of love and anguish that I didn't think would ever go away. "I know," I replied softly. "But that does not change what happened. It does not erase the lies." Jessica nodded and wiped her eyes. "I understand. I just want you to know that I will always adore you, and I'm deeply sorry for what I've done to our family." As I watched her walk away, I couldn't help but wonder whether we could have worked things out in another life. Could I have found a way to forgive and trust her again? But deep down, I knew the answer. The hurt was too great, the betrayal too essential to who we were as a partnership. We couldn't go back to our previous situation, which may have been for the best. As the divorce processes progressed, I found myself reminiscing on our relationship, attempting to identify where things had gone wrong. Were there any signals I had missed? Red signs that I had ignored? I reflected on our college years and our long-distance romance. Had Jessica's infidelity sprung from loneliness, insecurity, or was it a fundamental fault in her character that I had failed to recognize? In the end, I concluded it wasn't that important. The why wasn't as significant as the what, which was that Jessica had deceived me, lied to me, and concealed secrets from me for nearly 20 years. One night, I couldn't sleep and found myself going through old images on my phone. We were young and in love, grinning at the camera on our first date. Another of us during our high school graduation, full of hope and dreams about the future. Our wedding day, the birth of our sons, a lifetime of memories laced with bitterness from treachery. As I looked at these photos of our time together, I experienced a complex range of emotions. Anger at Jessica's dishonesty, sadness for the loss of what we had. Surprisingly, I also felt grateful for the happy moments we'd had and the beautiful children we'd raised together. Maybe that was the key to moving forward, I thought. Not forgetting the past, but recognizing both the good and the bad. To learn from everything and apply what we've learned to create a better future. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt an odd combination of sorrow and liberty. As I walked out of the courthouse, the weight of my wedding band visibly missing from my finger, I took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. This was it. The end of one chapter marks the start of another.